Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Here Movie Podcast, your greatest source for superhero movie discussion in the multiverse. My name is Adam Portrais, and I'm joined by Bruce Leslie.
I'm a prickly pear, and don't write my name in your book, Adam.
No, I got a little name, and there's all a book, and there's all these names in them. Like, you're good in my book. I'm trying to recreate the scene from Death Proof, but I don't remember the lines as well as I thought I would have. Okay. But today we will be talking about not that book, but the book in Death Note. Death Note has just come out on Netflix, man. So if you're a Netflix subscriber, like pretty much everyone on the face of flipping planet Earth is, you could see Death Note for free, man. This has got a lot of people, a lot of opinions on this thing, and you'll see where our opinions lie on it as well. But and how that relates back to comic books, because you know what? That's what we do on this program. I don't know if you know this, Bruce. 3 years in, I'm not sure if you know this, but we talk about comic book movies.
Well, it's about time.
About time we put these things together. Speaking of people that put things together, I love it when a plan comes together and people go down to the iTunes and drop us a 5-star review, a.k.a. Humdinger.
Humdinger?
And this one is from someone that goes by the name of 100 Spokes. That's a healthy tire right there. And it's entitled, Exactly What I Was Looking For. Aw. And it reads as follows. I found this podcast while looking for movie review podcasts to listen to while working. This has become one of my favorites, if not my favorite. Bruce's comic book history is very insightful and helpful for characters that I've never learned about. Sean Stallone connection was very confusing the first time I listened. I'm still not quite sure how or why, but I look forward to it. Adam does a great job as the host. The host is the most important part because studies show that if someone dislikes the first person they hear talking, then they'll never listen to the podcast again. Okay, I made up that study, but Adam really does a good job.
I like this guy or lady.
The guys don't waste much time getting into the movie that they're reviewing, and thank God they do not do a spoiler-free review followed by a spoiler review. Why do people do that? They also answered my email regarding Kirsten Dunst wanting Tobey Maguire replaced. Thanks, fellas. I'm now back to sleeping normal hours after having that resolved.
I'm glad we could be of service.
And that's a 5-star review from 100 Spokes, a.k.a. a Humdinger.
Humdinger.
And we'd encourage you too, man. If you like our show, you like what we do, man, spread it around. Let everybody know. Share the show out with people. Review us on iTunes and all that kind of good stuff. And if you'd like to give it a little bit more of an effort, man, why don't you go down to patreon.com/HMP and join one of the many people who help support this show. For me, it's always just about value for value. If you dig what we're doing here, if you like what we're doing, no matter what you can do, man, if it's $1 on up, anything that you can help, help with this show, it helps put back into us. It's whatever you think it's worth. And the cool part is that you'll get more stuff with it. You know, extra bonus episodes, pre-show, post-show, things you don't get anywhere else. And if you were like one of our people at DragonCon this past weekend, you got to sit up in the front row of one of our panels, man. That's how we treat you. You first class. First class.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
So we thank you guys all for that. So thank you, man. So let's go ahead and get on into it, because the email said that we waste no time getting to those things. And oh, shucks, I forgot to turn off that song. Hold on. I'm so excited. I'm excited to talk about this one because I knew nothing about it ahead of time. But let's go ahead and watch the trailer for you. Listen to the trailer for Death Note.
All the people that make life miserable, make life dangerous. What if we can change things? The human whose name is written in this note shall die.
Shall we begin?
You're a death god.
Yes.
What exactly can I do with this death note?
Put your name down and see what happens.
It's not gonna solve a few crimes. It's gonna solve all crime. Do you think that I'm crazy?
I think you're not crazy enough. We could change the world.
The killer has taken credit for over 400 deaths. Although we do not know how he kills his victims, we do know he's not some omnipotent force. He's a person, like you or me.
You're the one who flew into the sun. I'm just here to make sure you burn.
We're not the good guys anymore.
Hope you know what you're doing.
I promise you, you will not survive.
What they want is a god. So let's give it to them.
Alrighty, that was the trailer for Death Note. Here's the IMDb plotline. As we know, IMDb always 100% correct in everything they say and or do. Light Turner, a bright student. Good job, Warner Brothers. A bright student stumbles across a mystical notebook that has the power to kill any person whose name he writes in it. Light decides to launch a secret crusade to rid the streets of criminals. Soon, the student-turned-vigilante finds himself pursued by a famous detective known only by the alias L. This is directed by Adam Wingard, starring Nat Wolff, Lakeith Stanfield, and Willem Dafoe and more, Shea Winningham and more. So Bruce, I don't think a lot of people know that this here comes from a comic book, and the people that do will be more than happy to tell us all about it, I'm sure, a million times over. But for those who are not initiated, what's our comic book connection? Oh, shucks, hold on. Almost forgot myself.
It's time for Bruce's comic book connection.
There we are.
Well, Death Note is a Japanese manga series written by Tsugumi Oba and illustrated by Takeshi Obata. And the story follows Light Yagami, a high school student who discovers a supernatural notebook from a Shinigami named Ryuk. It grants its user the ability to kill anyone whose name and face he knows. Shinigami are gods or supernatural spirits that invite humans toward death and can be seen to be present or interpreted to be present in certain aspects of Japanese religion and culture. Ryuk is a bored Shinigami that drops a death note, a notebook that allows you to kill anyone simply by knowing their name and face, into the human world in order to have fun. Now, in the manga, Light is depicted as a young genius who uses this death note in an attempt to create and rule a utopia cleansed of evil, with him at the helm as a god. Oba said that he always mentioned apples in the comic, and we see that in the movie here as well, because he wished to use the dying message that Shinigami only eat apples, and that apples also fit well into Ryuk's big mouth. Now, apparently, Light bribes Ryuk with apples at least once in the comic, and something that I think we may have asked ourselves is, how did Ryuk get the death note in the first place? Well, in the manga, he succeeds in tricking the Shinigami king out of a death note. He deliberately writes the instructions inside the front cover in English, which he assumed to be the most popular language in the human realm, so people would understand its purpose. Light becomes known to the public as Kira, which is derived from the Japanese pronunciation of the English word killer. So they kind of played with that a little bit here. Ryuk, who is invisible to everyone other than those that possess the Death Note, follows Light around and takes enjoyment from Light's meticulous actions as Kira. Now, Kira's killings catch the attention of Interpol and a world-famous detective named L. L is an eccentric genius and international private detective reputed to be the world's greatest detective who takes on cases that have stymied national governments. L creates a small anti-Kira task force from the local police to help discover who Kira is, including Soichiro, Light's father. Now, this cat and mouse game goes on for a long time in the comics. At one point, Light is in college and he joins L and becomes part of the anti-Kira task force in hopes of finding a way to learn L's name and kill him. Light's plan is impeded by a love-struck second Kira, a famous model named Misa Amani, and her Shinigami Rim. So in the comic book, we have two Death Notes and 2 Shingami once the girl shows up. Then, of course, Light and Misa give up both their Death Notes, and wouldn't you know it, a third person with a third Death Note comes onto the scene. Light uses one of the many Death Notes to finally kill L. Then, big shocker, Light becomes the new L. I don't want to spoil the ending of the manga, but Light dies at the end.
That's your boost for you, everybody.
Hopefully that clears things up for people who may have watched this movie without knowing the source material. Things were changed. I'll just leave it at that. Things were changed quite liberally, and I'll try to maybe point a few of those out as we go along. But also, most of my knowledge of Death Note is secondhand research. I haven't actually read all the manga.
That's cool. Now, and I will say this before we get started, because it is a thing.
Yeah.
We are not experts in this. We don't claim to be. We know a lot. Listen, if you listen to this show, you know we know a lot about comic book stuff. I would say if there's any point in our armor that's weak, it is this area.
Far and away. I have the same sort of disclaimer I have to say a lot on heroes and villains.
So, if our experience and knowledge of this thing, our knowledge and then experience of this thing will be pretty much. I can't speak for Bruce, but for me, I'd seen the character before. I had heard of it and the basic sort of thing to it, but that's it. I really knew nothing. I've seen nothing. I know nothing, and I'm going solely off of this.
And also something else that can get tricky sometimes dealing with Japanese properties is that the anime and the manga both have devoted followings, and they quite often have different stories. So the folks that are more familiar with the manga will sometimes get upset if I reference the anime, and the folks that are loyal to the anime may get upset when I reference the manga. But just know that I'll be referring to both equally incorrectly.
Yes, and just know we listen. There's love in my hearts for all the weeaboos. You're a special, strange little flowers, the bunch of yous. And I don't dislike you. You're strange birds. There's no discounting that. But don't jump down our necks because we didn't get your thing right, or we may like something that you don't like or you think it is abomination. I just want to get that out of the bag because I feel like that's going to be a thing.
And there's a right way and a wrong way to misunderstand manga. So let's hope that we misunderstand it the right way instead of misunderstanding it the wrong way.
No, we're going to misunderstand. I can guarantee you that. Guarantee.
Well, I'll start with a couple of just overall things, man. First off, I feel like this is a property that took a while to happen, and that there's almost this idea that Netflix saved it from being lost. Like, I think this was something that some folks were working on trying to get a theatrical release for. Mm-hmm. Do you know much about the backstory at all? The nuts and bolts of it?
Yeah, I'm not sure about the actual the long history of it, but I think that this is something that had been kind of working around for quite some time. There had been some other stuff. There had been like fan films and whatnot. It's one of those properties that is very beloved. The people that love it. So it's not surprising, and it's also not surprising that it for those people that are quite devotees that it didn't live up to their expectations.
And I guess the next question is: are there still people that really want a westernized version of a beloved manga or anime story? I mean, we live in an age where you can get subs, you can get dubs, you can pick up foreign films, you can get your hands on the anime, I'm sure, through things like Crunchyroll. I mean, I can understand there was a time when it was hard to get things if they weren't given like a Hollywood release. But in this day and age, I almost feel like the more devoted manga anime fans would prefer not to have Ghost in the Shell given to us, or not to have something like this given to us.
Well, it's like anything in this situation. You don't have to watch this. You don't have to watch it. You can keep your anime, you can keep your manga, you can keep any other version of this that you like, and keep it, hold it to your heart. Well, you don't have to watch this. If you think you're going to hate it, matter of fact, you may not even want to watch it. But here's the thing. If you do watch it and you do hate it, you still have the other things. No one stole those from you. They're still yours. And
then also, if we're going to get an English language version of it, I think I might have enjoyed it just a little more if it was still set in Japan. I mean, like The Grudge, they made an English language version of that, and they still managed to set it in Japan, and they put some Western actors in there in some of the roles, and I think they could have done this with this, but I think it would have felt creepier to me, the whole idea of the Shingami in Japan versus in Seattle. I think I would have rolled with that a little bit better.
And it would have been fine. And you do have situations like that where, like, I first watched the American Grudge, right? Then I watched the Japanese version. Japanese version far superior.
That's usually what I hear.
Then there's the other side of the coin. Now, nerds will disagree with me, but Gore Verbinski's version of The Ring was way better than the Japanese Ringu, as we call it here in America. I thought the U.S. version was far superior. I thought from a storytelling standpoint, it did a much better job than the original did.
Hey, I'm gonna go out on a limb here too and say that I like Sam Raimi's Spider-Man better than the Japanese Spider-Man.
See, exactly. It doesn't always translate, people.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, man. It's just, it all goes down to what's there, and if you can separate yourself out and just have it as a completely different experience. And now Adam Wingard is actually an interesting person to have direct this. He's done some really interesting work. The big thing was that a lot of people might know him from was You're Next, something that got picked up at a festival around 2010, 2011, and was
super
huge hype.
The movie with the animal masks?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
okay, yeah, I'm familiar with it. Yeah.
It didn't get a proper release till years later. It was one of those things that, like, everybody at all the festivals was just like, this is amazing, this is so good. And we didn't see it forever and a day. It finally came out. I loved it a whole bunch. But he's done, your like segments in the VHS 1 and 2s. He did the ABCs of Death. He did the most recent Blair Witch, which I liked a whole bunch.
I haven't seen it.
I would definitely recommend that. And he's doing Godzilla versus King Kong, or versus Godzilla versus Kong is what it's called, coming up next. So who's to say? He's a young guy. He's my age, and therefore I must hate him for this.
Well,
but he does an
do set
interesting
it in
job.
Seattle, and I don't know. I guess if you got to pick a place, Seattle's as good as any. It kind of feels like New York though a lot at times. I don't know that it felt overly Seattle. Did you?
No, I mean, honestly, until kind of towards the end there, I wasn't 100%. Oh, and of course, when you look at cop cars, I wasn't sure where it was. It could have been anywhere.
Yeah, and in reality, I don't know. It might have been filmed in Vancouver, so they thought Seattle was just an easy,
probably,
thing to slide in there. But once again, I would have even liked it. Let's say it was filmed in San Francisco, or set. It doesn't have to be filmed there, but just say for story purposes, it was in San Francisco, and they could have had part of finding the Death Note and the Shingami in Japantown. Just something to tie it a little bit to Japan, I think would have made me dig it just a little bit more, because as it stands, it's just like this book falls out of the sky into a guy's lap, and it has a demon that kills people. And they don't really, unlike the manga, which kind of develops the backstory and explains the motivation of Ryuk. Boy, I'm going to struggle with that one. Nothing here, man. It just falls out of the sky. Just like for no good reason, boom, there's the Death Note. It just falls in your lap. And that sounds like a lazy, ridiculous setup, but if we would have probably bought it more if he stumbled on a crashed alien spaceship and the alien handed him the book before dying. I mean, equally improbable. It's no less ridiculous to find it from a dying alien than it is for it to just fall out of the sky into your lap. But something about our brains just doesn't like that shortcut setup. And believe me, I think they take a couple of shortcuts in the first half or so of this movie.
Or if he just, went into a shop, passed over a mogwai, and got the book instead.
Exactly, man. Or even we had some kind of backstory as the film went on that kind of explained a little bit about Ryuk as kind of almost like a Loki-style mischievous god that drops this book on people that he can sense are going to do bad or good things with it. He did
kind of allude to that.
Yeah, but I don't feel like it was real strong. It's just like, okay, book falls out of the sky. Next thing you know, it starts raining. The girl, the female lead, who I guess is Andy McDowell's daughter. Does that sound right?
She kind of looks like her. I could see that.
I think she is, man, because she was on, she was on some TV show or movie. I think she was on The Leftovers. I think that's where I know her from. Yeah. And I could be wrong, and maybe it's just because of the American Northwest setting. We're in Washington State. she's got the same kind of color hair, but I feel like she's trying to give us just a little bit of a Kristen Stewart vibe here.
Perhaps. I think she's more engaging of an actress.
I would agree with you there, man. But I just feel maybe it's just sort of a paranormal romance, urban fantasy kind of trope now that they have to follow, is that little bit of a Bella type. She's like a slightly crazier Bella, here. But
yeah, daughter of Andy McDowell. Yeah, very good.
And that character, I guess with her name being Mia, you just add one letter and you've got Misa from the comics. But I feel like it's really, for all practical purposes, a totally new character, and that this relationship is something that they felt they had to kind of wedge in, I think, for Western audiences to like the movie. I think I could have found it just as compelling if it was this cat and mouse game between Light and Elle, and we didn't necessarily have to have the introduced elements from Mia, which are all, from what I understand, pretty much introduced here.
I liked her a lot. I thought she was a great addition to this, and I thought that it gives him something to play off of. That's the big thing, is that it gives him something to play off of, and like she's a great, kind of antagonist in all this, if nothing else. She's always kind of pushing him along and stuff, gives him reasons to do the things that he does, and to me it made it seem a little bit more organic that way.
Yeah, and I don't know, just sort of, I guess. I think part of what probably bothered me is they do skip some of the connective tissue. Like they skip some of the connect the dots. It's like she's crazy. She hates him. She sees the Notebook. Next thing they're in love. And then we're supposed to be emotionally invested that they're strongly, passionately in love. But to me, she was just kind of like there. And I put this more on the writers and the director than on the actress, of course. But something about her just didn't feel sincere to me here, or about the way that character sort of wedged in. But in the beginning, man, they skip a lot of the connect the dots stuff and just go where they want to go.
So that brings me to like probably my biggest criticism of this thing is that it was just, now they've greenlit a sequel, but this was just one movie. And it goes through, they do so much in under 2 hours that it really, that's what got me. It's like, it just felt like this thing needed space and time to breathe. If this was like a 4-part miniseries and you just did this as a series and have like 4 parts here and then 4 parts for the sequel and stuff, you would have had more time for characters to, to stretch out, to breathe, to have a little bit more pacing in it, because it felt like they were going for broke and they were just like, crud, we got to get everything in here as big, as fast as we can, and we got to dot all the I's and cross all the T's that we can. Even if it's a little bit sloppy, we got to do it because we may never get another chance to do this again. Had they had room to breathe, I think it would have been a lot better.
And, even if they're just making a movie that may or may not get a sequel, they could have focused, I think, a little bit better, because I think there was some gold waiting to be discovered there in that relationship between Light and Mia, and the way that the whole sort of double, triple cross unfolds at the end. I think they could have focused on that relationship, maybe just sort of introduced Elle as an external stressor. But I feel like they went too grand with Kira too fast without explaining how it happened. They took big leaps to Elle figuring a whole lot out without explaining it, when really what worked in this movie was kind of the tension between Mia and Light as we get near the end. Like, I think if they'd identified better that that's where they wanted to focus on this movie and introduce some of these other concepts, but just wait and say, you know what, if we get another movie, we can flesh this other stuff out. I think this would have been, this could have worked well, and at times it almost feels like a Final Destination early installment kind of thing, where it's really about this interplay between him and her, and who can you trust in getting the book, and they know there's this awesome detective named Elle that's out there looking for him, so they're trying to cover their tracks and use that to move it along. But they try to sort of focus, like, is the conflict between Light and Elle, or is the conflict between Light and Mia, is the conflict between Light and his father? I feel like they tried to put too much of the manga into one movie, or too much of a big story, instead of trying to tell a single good story.
Yeah. I think if it could have just been spread out and let it breathe. Just let it breathe and be able to. But again, I think it comes down to, I don't know what it comes down to, but maybe it's got to be something on Netflix's part here, because it seems, I don't know that if you put him to the point and say, hey, was this the movie the way that you wanted to make it, or would you rather have had, more leeway to do bigger and better things over a longer period of time? I don't know that there's a possibility that Wingard would say that, oh no, I would keep it exactly the same way that it is. My guess is he would want to stretch this out further. But it's one of those things, man. It's like a lot of early movies from directors where they throw in the kitchen sink, man, because they just go, I may never get another chance to do this again. And he may have felt that there's no way there's a possibility I may have another chance to do this property. I got to make the best with what I can do in the amount of time with which I can do it. And as fast and breakneck speed as it is, and while that is a complaint of mine, overall, I like that. Because
Really?
it never got boring. It never sat back. Like, it didn't.
Okay.
While I would like
I'll
to have
just say
it sit back, it didn't.
The two parts that got me the worst, we see Mia and Light decide they're going to create this god called Kira. And I'm telling you, it's honestly, I'm not exaggerating here. It's like 35 seconds later, Kira is just known internationally and accepted, and people are like buying into this a little too fast for me.
Wouldn't that be awesome if that was like done over like just built up through like an entire 1 hour episode?
Yeah, I think so. And also, I think the story could have worked if Kira was just a localized Seattle phenomenon too. You could kill 400 bad people in the greater Seattle area. It doesn't necessarily have to be international with people all over the world. You know what I mean? Because it just seems like it grew too fast without explaining, like, how do people put two and two together. And then even more puzzling is this bizarre super detective, L, just shows up, and somehow he kind of has figured out almost everything. And the logic is not like Sherlock Holmes sharp logic. We just have to go with it that he figured it out because he did, for the most part.
Yeah, it was a just like, trust me, I figured it out kind of thing.
And he says, the way that he figured it out is he figured out that all the information had come from the Seattle police database. But how did he figure that out? You know what I mean? That's like, just kind of like, just trust me on this one. And
he comes up with these ideas and these theories and stuff of how everything worked. And you would just go, you are literally, now you're bred to be this, as we find out later, but you are literally the world's greatest detective that you only have to have, an inch to go on, and you've got the entire mile.
And then also, it's like he does a lot without evidence other than just deductive reasoning. And then when he finally figures out who it is, it's like all of a sudden it goes from where people trust, hey, L is the greatest detective there is, so if he tells us this is the way it is, we're going to believe him. And then when he finally figures out that Kira is Light, it's like he's still waiting for one more piece of evidence before he could arrest him. I wasn't buying that, because he's given full access to the task force to get Kira just because he says he's figured out almost who it is. And then when he finally has figured out who it is, it feels like there's nothing L can do about it, which was a weird kind of impotent situation there that I would have liked it a little better if he had used more evidence along the way, so that I could bought it once he figured out who Kira was. He still needed to find the death note, or he still needed one more piece of evidence, because then there's a little bit more tension in it, instead of me just saying, well, why doesn't he just have the guy arrested now, instead of sitting there at the ice cream shop and talking about it. Although that was kind of a cool Heat type moment where the cop and the robber were sitting there having their confrontation.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, and I like the whole conceit of that, because when he's walking around with the mask at first, during the beginning of the thing, I'm just like, what in the wide world of sports is this? What are we doing here? How are we going to explain this away? In an anime thing, you just go, that's what that character does. But they make it make sense. I'm sure it's the same way in the book. But it's just
but it's also another leap of logic. How did he figure out that they had to see that he had to see the person's face to kill them? I mean, were there people whose faces were documented to always be covered that should have been killed by Kira and weren't? That's another one of those leaps in logic where he just says, I figured out he has to see their face.
It's that beyond Batman detective skills that just are unreal, that you would put those two and two together. I got, again, you're that's what I'm saying. And I guess I'll keep repeating. If this was spread out and you had him to have to learn these things as opposed to seemingly just discover them, perhaps it would have,
And
felt
my
better.
understanding from the manga is that the big thing is he couldn't figure out L's name. It wasn't that he necessarily had to hide his face. And pretty early, not that long after L shows up, he does show his face and he quits hiding his face. Though it was kind of cool, I guess, to make the character mysterious at first. But
and he's so young to where I'm just like, how does any police officer look at this kid and just go, oh, the young dude that covers up his face and just wants to walk through the who gives a thumbs up to that?
But I kind of like that actor, man.
Oh, I love the actor. He's great.
At first, I thought, oh, this is going to be weird and obnoxious, but man, it grew on me. I really would be down for seeing more Light versus L stuff if it was, especially in a sequel. I don't think they'll feel the need to be as ambitious. You know what I mean? To try to put too much in there, and then we could get an interesting little cat and mouse between those two.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the actor I really like. He was probably most people know him from Get Out earlier this year.
I think I know him from Dope.
Yeah, Dope was good. Well, he was in Straight Outta Compton as Snoop Dogg a Dog.
Now, I haven't seen that yet, but I really like Dope. That's the one I went to see kind of on a flyer. I wasn't sure if I'd like it or not, and I found it charming.
Yeah, it's real good. But it's cool. I mean, I like all of this. I love that character. I think he does so well with that. Let's talk about this for half a second. Let's kind of go off here on a real fast thing now that we're talking about him. He has now just recently put out into the public that if they're doing a Joker origin movie, he would like to play Joker. What are your thoughts on that?
The guy that plays L?
Mm-hmm.
Sure, man. I'm for it.
He's tall. He's got the right build for it and everything.
He's definitely got the little bit wacky but still competent thing down.
I don't know. It'd certainly be an interesting choice. But when I was just like, and I was trying to think about it like the whole time while watching this, and I'm just like, I don't know. He might. It would certainly be interesting and different.
Now, I mean, obviously, I've got philosophical reasons to not want a Joker origin story.
Oh, we're on the same page there.
Yeah, but if you're going to do it, I kind of like the idea, race is not that important to the Joker. He falls into that vat of chemicals, and you can say bleaches his skin out no matter what color it starts. You know what I mean?
Or just have
to distill it down too simply.
Or just ended up with the same thing that you have Killing Joke. It's just like, if I'd like to choose my own adventure kind of thing.
Yeah.
So,
but anyway, I think that it will not be received well by fandom if they do a Joker origin story, no matter how good the movie may be.
Yeah.
But something else here in this movie, man, because they have good moments, but they just have leaps in logic that bug me. Something else I want to ask your opinion about. The Death Note. I think it's really cool. You write someone's name and time and within reason, a way that they die and it happens. But then it also turns into suddenly you can control them for 48 hours to do exactly what you want. And then that, to me, seemed like, okay, you've already got this really cool concept of being able to kill people just by writing their name in the book, but now you're also making them your minions before you die. And then they go on to add, you can write things like, and then the paper falls onto a fire. You know what I mean? Like suddenly I feel like I could write down, okay, Adam wins the lottery. Then he goes and writes a will giving all the money to me. And then he dies. I feel like, and Brandon Sanderson, a well-known writer, he says that when it comes to magic and mystical supernatural abilities, the limitations are ultimately more interesting than the powers. And I feel like they just keep expanding what you can do with this book and not stressing enough the limitations here.
Yeah, look, to me it seemed very anime. It seemed like something that they would do, that just kind of to put in this.
Right there, you're probably not wrong.
To give them a little bit more, give them a little bit more freedom than they probably deserve and everything, and just kind of let it flow. And you just go, "Oh, well, yeah, of course, yeah, that makes sense."
And I could go with being a simple minion, like when he makes the guy walk out and salute before getting hit by a truck. I could go with that. But then when you start to do these whole complicated 48-hour capers, it starts to lose it. And the thing that really seemed like a bridge too far for me was when he revealed he simply wrote in the book, and the page with my name in it will fly through the air and land in the fire. Like now you're suddenly controlling what should be totally independent variables that don't relate to dying.
Yeah, you're controlling time and space at that point.
I mean, you're controlling the floating of a piece of paper. Even if he said, like, you will go and take it and burn it yourself, I could understand that. And then he also suddenly puts like this gimmick in there where he said, what I said was, if she took the book from me, she would die. But if she didn't take the book, this never would have happened. I don't buy that either. I think once you write their name in there, they're toast.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. And the problem that a lot of these types of stories have is that there's untold amounts of rules that we don't know.
Which, once again, the limitations are more interesting than the abilities. I think they should have shared some of those rules with us. I even if it was silliness like the Gremlins, where it says don't feed them after midnight, and of course in the sequel they pointed out, well, which time zone are we talking about? What if you're on an airplane? And had a little fun with the rules. But at least if they had laid out, because they do lay out some rules, but then they don't lay them all out, and they don't bother to cover them. And it's easy enough to do. Once you finish the story, you don't have to make a movie from the first draft. You can go back and make those rules fit the way the story is going to end up.
Yeah, it's just, oh, by the way, these don't work on Thursdays. Like, what?
And if you write a name in it, you can pull it out and burn it, but only once.
Yeah. Like, I love how that's just a rule of like, but only one time. So no one else in the God knows how long history of this book has ever done that.
Yeah, plus, when you get the book, you don't know, has that ever been done before? And you don't know that you can trust Ryuk. Let's talk about Ryuk.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about something that I did like. I like Willem Dafoe. But I'll also say I don't know that they needed CGI. His face alone looks like a death god. They could have just put some porcupine quills all over him and let him just – I think I would have really been into some kind of goofy, over-the-top live-action Ryuk where it's just Willem Dafoe with porcupine pins coming all out of him.
I'm just going to be strange. Hope you don't mind. It's like, gee whiz, dude, you're frightening. It was really good. Great voice and everything. I loved the, and again, I'm not married to how anything looks in the book, so, keep that in mind. I loved how it looked. It was creepy, it was scary looking, but yet somehow in some weird way, it wasn't so creepy and scary that it was beyond, but it kind of straddled that line, which is an interesting thing to do.
Yeah, I was into it. I enjoyed the character design there, and I'm kind of familiar with what Ryuk has looked like in the comics, in the anime, and in the Japanese live-action movies. I think that they did a good job of keeping him pretty faithful to where he comes from and still giving it a little bit of a spectacle value to let you see something you hadn't seen before. But yeah, I was real happy both with Dafoe's understated performance, honestly, and with how the character looked and with how he was used enough that I felt like I got to see plenty of him. I never, I hate movies where I come away feeling like I don't quite know what that thing looked like. Like, I feel like I know what he looked like, but also I wasn't so overexposed to him that I became desensitized to his appearance.
Yeah, it's almost amazing in how much you see, but yet still at the same time don't see. There's a weird kind of level to where it's just like there's certain times where he's out of focus, and then there's times where he's full in focus, full in frame and everything. And yet, if you were truly to describe him, you may have a hard time doing that with the information that you got. And I think that's a really interesting thing. And I think it also speaks to the design of the character.
I'm also glad that they kind of stuck to the roots where he's just a god who's present when these deaths happen. And they didn't do what I think some Western filmmakers would be tempted to do and show him actually killing the people with his own monster claws and stuff, Yeah, just being a presence and being there, that creepy thing that's in the back that only, the holder of the note can actually see, which I thought was another good little point. Yeah. And I also think they did a pretty good job of combining sort of psychological thriller with horror movie genre kind of stuff. Because, that first kill was a Final Destination style kill. Mm-hmm. And I could see how somebody would be tempted to say, okay, man, this is the perfect setup to give us something like Final Destination, where the whole movie is built around him coming up with ridiculous ways to kill people, writing it in the book, and we watch it happen.
Right.
But they choose to give us a little bit of that, but not just make that what this is.
I thought that was good. It gave you an idea of like, hey, here's how these things happen. Because at the same time, you just go like, oh, decapitation. Well, how are they going to pull that off? It's just two guys, kind of beating up on a girl and everything. How are we going to pull off a decapitation in this world? And then, you put all those pieces into place, and then boom, there you go. And the nice part is too, again, Netflix, so they can get fairly graphic enough on stuff, which was great, but didn't linger on it, of course, which was also very good.
And we do get a real, the end is a nice little, I don't know if I would say it's a straight up like Kaiser Soze type ending or an Ocean's 11 type ending, but I knew something like this was going to happen, that he was going to end up using the book in an unexpected, clever way, and it was going to play out where he outsmarts everybody. I also thought that there might be a situation where maybe L would end up somehow being the one to have the book and decide to use his super intellect. He could do it more responsibly than Light did or something like that. And that may happen in a sequel. You know, in the manga, it was Light who replaces L, and I thought a nice twist would be to have it's L that replaces Light. But we'll just have to see, I guess, what the sequel holds for that.
Yeah, and I like that kind of stuff. To me, and that becomes, I know I get crap on the show for it all the time, but to me that's a very literary thing too as well, is to go back and have that like, hey, here's how everything unfolded that you didn't see, so to speak. And I always like that.
Now, what about Watari? I kind of like this character of Watari, sort of the caretaker for L, this Asian gentleman who is kind of stern and sort of feels a little bit like an old school Bond steward or something. A nice little twist on things. I mean, the character that's represented by Watari W in the comics is an English character. He's an Englishman from England who fills the role of W.
Oh yeah, huh?
So it's a nice little twisty change up kind of thing.
Wait a minute. So I look at this. Hold on.
Yeah.
I pulled it up. This is something that I've been working on for a long time, and I never found it. This guy was in it, in the movie that I saw and could never remember the name of because it looks so awful. Alpha and Omega. It is a wolf movie that looks like I'm pretty sure this is what I saw. I saw a trailer for this thing once, and it looks like an awful cutscene from like an original Xbox. It looks
I feel like
so
I've seen
bad.
this.
I saw like a trailer for it in the theater once, and I'm keeping this in mind, boy, because this is something. This looks so just terrible, just terrible. But yeah, I like that guy. I thought he was pretty good.
Yeah, I found him to be kind of interesting. I like the way Light really uses him to be his ace in the hole to try to get L's actual name, and then. Because of the machinations of Mia, he's not able to save W's life. And
doesn't he give you a big Hugo Strange vibe too?
Yeah, in fact, there was, I don't want to say these things because I don't want people to say, oh, Bruce thinks all Asian people look alike. But for just a moment, I had to look real close and make sure that wasn't BD Wong. Because he had
with
such
the
a
glasses and everything.
Vibe.
It was that look, dude. It looked like Hugo Strange, man.
If he didn't have like the little pigtail thing on top of his head, I would have maybe even had to go to IMDb to verify whether or not it was BD Wong. But he's definitely got that Hugo Strange vibe, and you throw the idea of sort of experimenting on orphans into the mix, and he really has a Hugo Strange vibe.
Apparently, he's done a lot of voiceover work for video games, that guy.
But that's one of those. I'm glad you brought it up instead of me because I didn't want people to think I couldn't tell the difference between BD Wong and any other Asian person.
Now, I didn't know if it was. I didn't think it was him per se, but I'm just like, man, this guy looks like he's right out of a cutscene from one of those Arkham games, dude.
Absolutely, the little glasses, the whole 9 yards. But anyway, he ends up getting killed, and it's kind of cool because I felt like they showed and I don't know that the director was trying to be this intricate with it, but I felt like it was one of those moments where I could see the remorse on Light's face that he caused this to happen, and he thought he was going to be able to avert it, but he failed. And then, L just flips his wig when he figures out that Watari's dead. It's like he's all of a sudden lost, and he goes and steals a police car and goes on a little bit of a rampage. And it's, one of those moments where they can show us that our cop and our robber, so to speak, if we're using the Heat kind of parallel, that it shows us the similarities between those two and how they're actually basically the same, just coming from a different starting place.
Mm-hmm. No, it totally it works for me. While this thing is always going at this breakneck pace and everything, I'm enjoying it the whole time.
Yeah, and I like the music too. I don't think we've mentioned that they had some interesting musical decisions in this movie that I thought worked.
Yeah. Now, for the actual score itself was actually done by Atticus Ross, who did the music for 2 Fincher film, 3 Fincher films, I think, at this point. So you got like a Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. He also did Social Network. He may have done one other, but his kind of I love him and his kind of electronic style and everything. Those are two albums that I purchased by themselves.
I like the music from both of those movies you just referenced.
So him and what's his nose there were responsible for all those, and they got Academy Awards for heaven's sake. So I think they're doing fine.
And then also the needle drops. They have cover songs of familiar songs but unfamiliar voices and in different keys and things, different arrangements. I thought it was kind of cool. I like the atmospheric work that was done here, even if I'm disappointed at times with the narrative work.
Yeah, it looks good. It sounds good. It was like it had those creep moments. It had those kind of detective moments and stuff. And I don't know, for me, it worked a lot.
And this isn't quite like the Magnificent Seven being a beautiful Western remake of the Seven Samurai, but I guess there are times when you add something new creatively and artistically by doing the Western remake. I might have hit it a little too negatively in the beginning, but some of the atmospheric works here, and something that I think at least in the last 30 years, Japanese cinema and Japanese fiction has been real good at atmospheric type stuff. For me, that goes back to the Ring is my first experience with that stuff, where they're really good with the atmospheric kind of storytelling.
Yeah, I mean, but and some won't like this, but I think they fail in a lot of other stories with having clarity on certain things, or certainly overcomplicating things that don't need to be overly complicated, or sure shooting, just dragging things out to the nth degree. I mean, just look at a lot of anime on account of that, where it's just like there's stuff where it's just like it goes on forever and nothing happens. So at least with this, heavens knows everything's happening a bit more faster than I would like them to, but at least things are happening.
And I'll also say something else this movie accomplishes. I think there are like 3 or 4 live action Japanese movies in this world. And I'd kind of like to go check out Death Note 2. They even have, for people that don't like subtitles, I even saw a cast list where they had English speakers to do dubbing as well. So I don't know how hard those are to find, but I'm kind of curious. I've seen pictures of what Ryuk looks like in the Japanese version. It's pretty cool.
And look, if anything, now I'll say this out there to the big anime fans and stuff. This has done what I think that, while you may not like this, I think this did what you should hope something like this would do. And that's to get a noob like me interested in the property.
Yeah,
and that's what this does.
All that I knew about this going into it is I'd seen Ryuk before. I'd seen Ryuk before. I thought it was a cool character, the kind of character I might like to have a tattoo of, or a poster, or a little figurine, but I knew nothing about who the character was.
Those are very different things, Bruce, of varying levels of commitment.
A poster, tattoo, or figurine.
Some of those things is like, a poster, you would have to put that up in your house to let people know that, hey, this is something I'm into. A figurine, you could probably put that off on a desk. Maybe not a lot of people notice it, but it's there if somebody looks and goes, oh, well, that's kind of neat. Or an actual thing that will be with you to the day you die.
And this is the kind of decision I make. I see a character that looks cool, get the tattoo, don't know much about him. I happen to run into someone who is all about manga and anime, and Death Note's their favorite. Man, I expose myself for the poser I am. So yeah, I'll stay away from the tattoo.
Yeah. But ask him about his pigpen tattoo, everybody. He loves that. That one awesome. He knows a lot about.
It's in my bathing suit area, so not many people can see it.
You got to have special access.
But in all fairness, I wear a particularly large bathing suit.
That's true. And but if you're ever in the gym with old Bruce Leslie there, just pop on over to get a good look at his pigpen tattoo where the sun don't shine.
Yeah.
Which, oddly enough, is already dirty enough and doesn't need a tan, so it's fine.
It has natural stink lines around it, like Pigpen always had.
Did this guy just have an accident? I'm sorry, that's a Pigpen tattoo. That's a bizarre choice, sir. But I mean, I'll give it to you.
I may have to work that into a story.
Oh man, people get Bruce's books. It's only going to encourage him to do more of this silliness. So I don't know why you wouldn't. But yeah, man, look, great performances from everybody here. I really like what they were doing. Again, I'd like to see this put into like, a 4-part miniseries or maybe even more. Make it like an actual season worth of stuff. Give us like a Netflix thing where it's, on Netflix proper, like, Defenders here. Give us 10 episodes. Let it stretch out. Let it breathe. Let this thing do what it should have done in the first place instead of cramming it all in there. And hopefully with the sequel, this will prove popular enough, and hopefully with the sequel, they'll let it stretch, they'll let it breathe, and then maybe do a couple of sequels as opposed to just like boom, put it all in that little tight package where it can't move or breathe.
Yeah.
All right. So before we get to our final review here, we've got to ask ourselves.
I've got a question for you, man.
What's that?
Is it possible that this movie could relate in any way to Sylvester Stallone?
Usually that's not a thing that happens, but I think so, and I believe I have a prepared statement.
You don't say.
Well, here we are again, HMP'ers, another week, and still no Sean Keenan for the Stallone connection. So get ready to forcibly hear my best attempt at aping what most handsome member of our crew does. Sure, Pat Boone's version of Tutti Frutti is horrible and a sad excuse for the original, but someone out there must listen to Pat Boone, right?
Oh, yeah, I do.
Now, we all miss Sean. I get it. But in doing all the heavy lifting for this week's Stallone connection, I thought of our own adult-sized Ben Stiller and the work that he does in the movie biz. Now, you remember school? Everyone seemed to have their own group, their own clique. Jocks hung out with other jocks, goth kids hung with goth kids, and the group I'm sure most of us here were in, nerds hung out with nerds.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I'm here to tell you, HMP'ers, that the movie business is a lot like high school. You see, in Hollywood, people like to work with people they like. So when you finish up working on a television show or movie with a group of people that you really like, the last thing you want to do is have that whole first day of school feeling again on the next project. So you do what anyone would do. You find a way to bring your friends along. That's what movie crews do, and they often go from project to project, bringing along the same crew, and who better to work with than people you like, right? Well, I'm here to tell you that the production team on Death Note was no exception to this rule. Take the makeup and effects department. So many members of the crew worked on TV shows like Once Upon a Time, Lucifer, Legends of Tomorrow, Almost Human, Fringe, and films like X-Men Last Stand, Final Destination movies, and the new Power Rangers movie, which we covered on episode 150 of HMP. Plug for us. But every now and then a hero emerges, a rogue wave. If you will, it's a ringer. Sometimes you look at the call sheet and you notice one thing is missing. Someone who's worked with the senior citizens who's spent the last 15 years popping HGH like Tic Tacs. You're missing your required connection to the man that keeps our universe in line. The watcher that watches Uatu, but unlike the real watcher, kicks Uatu's teeth in when necessary, Sylvester Stallone. This week, that hero, HMP'ers, is one Mr. Tony Lindala. Tony Lindala has been working in the land of Holly in the makeup department since 1990. With over 120 credits to his name, your boy Tony keeps busy. He's worked on everything from a Doctor Who movie in 1996 to Andromeda, Dark Angel, The Santa Claus 2, The X-Files, Bates Motel, Nick Fury, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., a.k.a. Episode 56 of HMP, and what's sure to be a review one day on Sean Keenan's own Dog Eat Pod, Santa Paws 2, The Santa Pups. But undoubtedly the height of Tony Lindala's career has to be the special effects makeup artist on the 2002 classic ICU. What's that? Haven't seen ICU? Don't worry, no one has. But why not? It's based on a novel, and from what I heard, novels can be pretty good. Here's the IMDb plot line for you for ICU. When a serial killer turns his attention to the lead detective, he is asked to check into a clinic treating law enforcement officials who can't face their jobs. As the patients begin being murdered, they restart doing what they do best. What, not enough for you? How's about this? The movie stars Charles S. Dutton, Chris Christopherson, Jeffrey Wright, Tom Berenger, Stephen Lang, Robert Patrick, and, Sylvester Stallone.
Sounds good.
I mean, what else do you need to know? If Blockbuster Video was still a thing, I'd tell you to head on down there post haste to pick up a copy of ICU today. But alas, Blockbuster is gone, and like it, you're not likely to see ICU anytime soon either. But if you do, I hear Stallone puts a shiny new quarter under your pillow when you sleep at night.
Oh, nice.
So you got that going for you. So thank you for bringing ICU to our attention, Toby Lindala. You're this week's Stallone connection. Now, creepy Willem Dafoe voice, let's review this thing so we can finally turn on the lights and stop being scared.
As we talked about this, I think you won me over just a little bit on this movie. I was disappointed with the way they skip over connecting some of the dots in the beginning. But I did find there, to be kind of good intentions, at least with how it wrapped up. The character of L is kind of intriguing, if not explained very well. I think there's something to take away from this. And I think the best thing that happened to me by watching this is now I kind of want to see the Japanese live action versions. If they make sequels to this, I'll probably, end up checking them out, even though I'm not necessarily clamoring for them. I will probably check them out. So I'm going to give this a right down the middle Damian Wayne.
Yeah, I mean, look, it is what it is, and we can't go back in time and switch up what changed and give this thing the length and everything that it truly felt like it deserved. But I can't blame director and crew here for what they did, because I think they felt they only had one at bat here, and if they didn't get it off, then there's nothing doing. But I liked it a lot, and it did do the thing of get me interested in the actual source material. And I think, as much as I know fans of the manga and the anime will poo-poo this thing, and Lord knows they have. If you look at the reviews online, it ain't pretty. But I think the people that don't know the material, that don't know what this is, can have a very good time at it, enjoy it, and be able to, possibly go on and enjoy the source material much like the actual, crazy wild out fans do. So with that in mind, and all of its kind of problems that it does have, and it does have some, I'm giving this a solid Tim Drake. I had a really fun time with it, and I want to see what else they're going to do with it. So, I mean, I was really shocked. I was going in this with kind of a nothing attitude, neither positive nor negative. I just knew that it was a thing, and I dug it. I dug it a whole bunch, and honestly, I'll probably watch it again.
Well, very cool.
So that is it, everybody. We've got another week down, and another thing that, we just review things on this show. We can't help it. What do you want from us?
Yeah.
So in the meantime, before we talk about what we're doing next week, in the meantime, Bruce, where can we find more of your work on the internet, sir?
Hey, I want everybody to mark their calendars for the 2018 Dragon Con, because I may or may not be there. So go ahead and mark that down. And while you're marking things on your calendar, just go on over to Amazon. Check out my latest book, Dragon in Gallus, the Lump Adventures Book 2, now available as an audiobook on Audible. I know a whole bunch of you guys have checked out Dragon in the Needles on Audible, so why not check out the sequel, Dragon in Gallus? Just wait till you got a credit and throw it my way. I would love that.
Very good. And, of course, our other podcast, Preacher Podcast, preacherpodcast.com. Go listen to that. Rounding up the season here real quick, so get on board while you can. And, of course, the Film Find at thefilmfind.com. Do release reviews every single week there. And, of course, if you're around on Saturday evenings at around 10 p.m. and you go to nerdtalknow.com, you'll actually see a live show where I talk about all kind of things nerdy and take phone calls from you people, so, we can get to know each other a little bit better, huh? You want to know me? I want to know you. That didn't sound creepy at all, now did it? Next week,
not too creepy.
Oh, hey, how y'all doing? So next week, hopefully, it's been put off for some time here. We wanted to see if we could get Keenan back for it. We don't, as of this recording, we're not 100% sure if it'll happen yet. But next week, we'll try to get back and cover the last half of the Defenders there for you, wrap that up and everything, and keep going on in, man, because the rest of the year is pretty much booked up. So we're gonna keep on rolling here and keep on doing what we do. That is it, everybody. Join us back here next week for hopefully the Defenders Part 2. For the absent Sean Keenan, Bruce Leslie, I'm Adam Portrais. Stay super, everybody.
Goodbye, Marty and Evie.
'Cause you